Hi everyone. So just as a warning, my Zoom wouldn't work on this computer, so I had to make this video using some weird sketchy app I found on the web. So I wasn't actually able to make a PowerPoint presentation, so I tried to compile most of my slides in this picture you see here. So just bear with me. I'm sorry for the inconvenience or whatever, but so today I'm going to talk about the contemporary Chinese landscape artist Sheng Deshan, and that's the guy in the upper left corner here. So just for some basic background information, Sheng Deshan was born in 1899 during China's last dynasty, the Qing. And he was actually born into an artistic family who encouraged his pursuits in art, so that was really nice for him. But the more I read about Sheng Deshan, the more interesting he becomes. He actually had a pretty crazy life. So, for instance, he was captured by bandits one time because he didn't have enough money to travel home from school. He was a monk at one point. He had a lot of wives. And he was friends with Picasso, which I thought was kind of cool. But I don't know. If you're like me, you like to know a bunch of weird facts about an artist. It helps you remember them better. But anyway, Sheng Deshan eventually traveled to Shanghai, where he studied with famous calligraphers and painters, and he learned about all the traditional painting styles. And after the communists take over in China, he traveled to various parts of the world, such as the US, Brazil, Argentina, and I think Taiwan too. So he did a lot of traveling, had a lot of experiences with different people. And one thing about Sheng Deshan is that wherever he went, he always surrounded himself with lots of people and friends, and he liked to present himself as a traditional painter. His love for tradition was fostered by his love for collecting landscape paintings, and he collected these paintings from different dynasties, and I think dynasties as far back as the Tang dynasty. But out of all the paintings that he did, he's probably most famous for his landscape paintings. Later in his life was when he actually developed a new painting technique called splash ink or pochai. I think that's how you say it. Pochai or pokai. But anyway, that was probably what he was most famous for. And just like with any other artist, you may copy certain aspects of traditional styles, but for the most part, artists like to develop new ways of presenting their ideas and views about the world. So Sheng Deshan wasn't different in that aspect. But in the large painting in the bottom here, I don't think you can see my cursor, but this is one of those splash ink paintings. It's called Late Return to the Riverside Village. And if you can remember anything from back when we learned about Chinese art, you can definitely notice the similarities between this painting and older paintings from previous dynasties. So just for comparison, I have this painting over in the tall painting in the right corner, the right side, by Shinzu called Lofty Mount Lu, and this was back from the Ming Dynasty, and I think this picture is in your book too, but I'm sorry, I can't move my head over in the corner, so part of it's covered up, but there's actually really tiny buildings all throughout this piece. There's a stream, and I know they're really tiny details and you probably can't see it from here, but there's also mountains in the background. All of these items are very characteristic of traditional Chinese landscape paintings. So landscape painting in China has always been deeply tied to philosophy and religion, specifically Taoism and Chan Buddhism. So these two philosophies emphasize aspects such as harmony with nature and interaction with the cosmos. But Chinese landscape painting was especially designed to reflect these qualities. And if you take a look at Sheng Deshan's painting, the one I mentioned earlier, and the large one in the bottom, you can definitely see the influence of older paintings and ties to Taoism and Chan Buddhism. So if you notice, the evidence of human activity in this painting is very minuscule. The architecture is almost just swallowed up by this vast landscape. And this relates to the idea of humans being one with nature, and where people only take a very small part in nature's much vaster overall scheme. And that's one thing about Chinese landscape paintings too. Artists in China were considered more of philosophers rather than artists, because every single thing in the painting has meaning. It's not just done randomly. It is meant to convey some sort of message. But anyway, also nature was viewed as this place of retreat and meditation. But as with most Chinese landscape paintings, this isn't supposed to be an actual scene from nature. It may be based on a real scene, but it's supposed to be sort of imaginary and emphasize certain aspects rather than convey a real scene. Also, take a look at the mountains in the background. Mountains have always been very symbolic in Chinese art as sort of a connection or a bridge between humans, nature, and the cosmos. So they kind of separate these two worlds. In addition to this, recall back to the ideals of the Wen Ren or the literati painters from the Song Dynasty, and their idea of an artist being able to manifest his or her ki or chi, qi, when painting. So chi is mastered by the artist through spontaneity and this sort of loose brushwork that is meant to capture the essence of a subject rather than every single little detail. So you can definitely see the ties to these ideals in this painting. Just taking a look at these seemingly quick strokes that compose the grass and the foliage in the foreground and middle ground. Also these spontaneous blending of these pools of color. All of these are spontaneous elements. They were done thoughtfully, but they were done quickly as well, if that makes sense. Also, one last thing I should mention is that abstract expressionism was being promoted in Europe at the time, and if you can remember from earlier, I mentioned that Sheng Deshan was friends with Picasso. So you can see some of that influence in this work as well, with the mild abstraction of the forms, like the buildings. They're reduced to their most simple form, and that relates, of course, to the idea of Taoism and Chan Buddhism, but also abstract expressionism. Also, this use of these colors are very expressionistic. But overall, you can definitely notice the philosophical influences along with the modern influences that led Sheng Deshan to being thought of as a modern master whose work still remains influential even after his passing in 1983, especially with this new splash ink technique. A lot of artists have actually mimicked this technique, but also, just for your reference, I have another one in the top corner that also displays the splashed ink and the abstract loose forms of the trees and all these elements of Taoism and Chan Buddhism. But That's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a wonderful day.